Hey, what up, guys? It's the next day. So ever since I had this van, it's never really wanted to stop right, and it sat in a cow pasture for probably 2 years before I got it. So the moisture from the dirt and the grass have gotten to it. I mean, like, as you can see, the bleeder screw is gone, but I'm not gonna worry about that today. I'll worry about that when I have to change the caliper because I don't need to bleed them today. But basically, the problem is this bracket gets a bunch of rust behind the brake hardware. The brakes freeze up, they don't want to move. So even though there's nice thick brake pads in here and a nice thick rotor, because everything was rotted and didn't want to move, the brake pads get pushed in, they hang up, they stink, they don't want to release, and basically everything's all glazed over. The rotors are all glazed, the pads are all glazed. I changed the passenger side, the pads were cracked from the heat from rubbing. So figured I'd do all 4 tires and hell of a lot better chance of stopping. Alright guys, so the first thing you want to do is loosen this bolt. I mean, obviously I already got them loose, but they're 18 millimeters, so take out the top bolt for the caliper, pull out the bottom bolt for the caliper, just throw them on a rag. I mean, they're pretty much the same, but if you want to keep top and bottom separate, you can do that too. Alright, so then you want to pop your caliper off, which you're basically just going to take a screwdriver, throw it in the top, kind of pry it back a little, pop it in the bottom, and you're good. Now you don't want to just let this hang. There's a lot of weight on this hose. So I usually use is just a little S-hook I bent up out of some brazen rod. You can use a piece of string, strap, bungee cord, anything. Just hang it from the A-arm so there's not a bunch of pressure on that hose. And you'll be all set. But you don't want to keep it out of your way too, because you take the caliper bracket bolts out. Alright, so the next step is you want to take the 2 bolts out for the brake holder bracket here. Just right there. Once again, I've already got it loosened up. These are 21 millimeter. So pull this out. Set it down here with the other ones. Pull this one out in the bottom of the bracket. And then pop this bracket off with the brakes right in it. Alright. That was easy. Toss it to the side. And then your drum, you're just going to pull off. If it's on there a little tight, just probably have to whack it with a hammer a couple times on the back, but they'll pop right free. It's just got a little bit of rust on it. As you can see, as I said, there's just a little bit of rust holding that on there. A couple good whacks with a hammer should pop right off. Another thing is, if you're going to do this, use a jack stand. Don't just rely on your jack, because they fail all the time. Apparently jack stands fail too, but at least you got twice the shot of surviving. So now on both of these pads, there and all up in there, you can see all the cracks from the heat from where they constantly rub because they couldn't back themselves off of the rotor. So right there causes your glazing. The pads are junk. The rotor's basically junk. I mean, I guess you could have it turned, but for the whole $50 it costs for a new rotor, you might as well, because what's it going to cost you? $30 to get it turned? So seriously, what the hell's the difference? But yep, there you go. So we'll throw new brakes on and go from there. All right, so some of the reason the brakes won't move is because of all this flake rust that built up under the brake hardware from this thing sitting for a couple of years in a field. So basically what you want to do is, I use a power wire brush and a chisel, knock off all the real flaky stuff, and then file it back down again to somewhat original profile, and that way things back on. So look something like this when you're done. Alright, so I got everything cleaned up and put back together, and now as you can see, the brake pads, they slide nice and easy like they should. So this thing should stop a lot better now. Alright, how you doing, guys? It's a couple days later, because actually after I turned the camera off after that last clip, we had a little earthquake. So I decided, in case we had another one, I didn't want to be working under this van on jack stand. So I went and did some other things. And now it's, like I said, 2 days later. I just got home from work. I'm in the Northeast and it's daylight saving, so it's dark out already. But anyway, we gotta put this caliper on. In order to do that, you gotta push these back. There's a couple ways to do it. They make a plate with a threaded piece. You can screw them back. You can use a C-clamp. I like to use just these large jaw vice grips. It's the easiest way I find to do it. Just kind of squeeze them back, tighten it up a little bit, squeeze them back again. And tighten it up till it's all the way back. And clamp that one in, grab another one, do the same thing on the other side. Now I should be able to pop them right off and slip this right over the new brakes, and there you go. Be all set. You just don't want to crush the two rubbers in the back. You just want to take your two bolts, coat them with a little bit of grease. I use just some wheel bearing grease, works fine. Put them back in and you're all set. Alright, this is the bracket that holds the brakes on the back tire. I didn't bother filming taking it apart because it's the same as the front. As you can see, once again, the pads are all cracked, but they're mostly cracked on one side. This time they weren't actually stuck in here, but where they were cracked was on this side. And what happened now is this is stuck where it should move freely like this. So it's out of grease. We need to get it out of there. Alright, so now that the peg's out, you can see it's completely rusted over. So I'll clean all this up with a power wire brush and re-grease it all. This is all rusted down inside too, so we'll have to clean that out with a little wire brush. And, you know, put grease in it. It'll be fine. Alright, so I'm just going to use a wire brush on a 4.5-inch grinder to clean this up real quick. Get it nice and clean and be good to go. Alright, so that's good and clean now, so just grease it up, put it in and slap it back together. That'll be the end of it. Alright, so I ended up having to replace the back left caliper. And I get them on the new bracket. I ended up replacing the front left caliper because the bleeder screw was stuck and I wouldn't have been able to bleed the brakes out. So I replaced those two, and now the bottom of the rubber line that goes from the frame to the rear caliper was rotted. So I'm replacing that. And of course, where the two brake lines went into it, the fittings were stuck on the line, so they just wanted to twist, so I had to cut them out. So I got new fittings. So what I'm going to do now is, this wrapped around and it came in the front, this one come in the side. There's plenty of brake line here, so I'm going to cut this one back, reflare it, put the end on it, straighten it out a little, put that one in like it was. This one I'm going to cut it back to here, clean it off, reflare it, put the fitting on it, then reflare it, and then just bend it down and come into the top rather than come around and come in the front. If I need to, I can drill in the hole in the bracket, move it down a little bit. That's not a big deal either. But we'll go ahead and do that and see what happens. Alright, so I got all the black coating cleaned off the line that Chevy puts on, which can't complain about. It's a good coating and it stops the line from rotting. I got that cleared back. I got the fitting put on the back. I got the clamp on. 1/4 inch hose sticking out enough. Alright, so once you got it all clamped up, ready to go, you want to take the correct size fitting. This one's 1/4 inch. Should have a little peg there, but it broke, but it still works. This is to start your double flare. So just throw this in the middle. Just clamp up to it. Alright, back that off. And as you can see, it rolled over the edge. And then all you do is you take this without the fitting, screw it right back into the hole, and that'll clean the edge up and bevel it nicely. And there you have it. Nice double flared end. So now we've run into our next problem. This bracket here is pretty much keyed for this hose. So once it goes in the bracket, it holds it, you know, in this direction. Well, I need the hose to now sit like this. Well, like this. So what I'm going to do is just cut this off here. I'll turn it sideways, weld it back on, give the bracket a coat of paint, paint it on the chassis, and then we'll put it back together. I'll check back in with you when it's done. Alright, so here she is, all cleaned and welded. So as you can see now, instead of the curved part facing to the right, it's now facing up. So that when this is mounted on the chassis like this, the hose will come through and the other piece will be facing up to put the fitting in. So, alright, I'll cut back when it's all done. Alright, so here's the brake line all installed. This used to face out, now it's facing up. So this can just come in the top rather than going around to the front. This still is in the back like it always did. And then the line runs down to the caliper. Then you gotta bleed your calipers out to get all the air out of your lines. And then everything's good. So if you like this type of thing, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.